Okay, I think we've got some folks on the live chat now. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Hopefully you joined us for the last 45 to 50 minutes on SD1 Sports. Now transitioning, it's kind of like that switch from ESPN to ESPN2 when they've got to move studio shows or games. It's kind of that transition over to Mark Rogers TV. Hopefully we didn't leave too many people in the dust over at SD1 Sports, but tried to explain and gear everyone up for the transition. Now we are just a few minutes away from the selection show on ESPN as we will all hang out together and take in the selections. If you're asking me who the 4 best teams in the country are, I would say Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, and Ohio State. But those are not the 4 teams that I would select. All right, we've got a call coming in. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, I was calling earlier about letting the fans pick.
Yes.
Yes, so what do you think about that? Like, I think that we shouldn't let them pick a random group of 5 teams. Like maybe they have to be a ranked team. Like they have to be in the top 10 if they didn't make it earlier. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So we're still going to have 4 teams make it?
No, like expanded though. Like the committee picks 6, and there's another 2 teams that the fans get to pick, but they have to meet like so many criteria. Like they must have played in the conference championship or had 10 wins or something like that.
Well, if there's a criteria involved, when you first called and said let the fans pick, I thought, well, we know who has the most fans. You've got Ohio State and Alabama right at the top, and probably Michigan and Notre Dame and a few others. So
but they made it automatically, like they won their conference championship or something. So just because you have a million fans or something, you don't automatically make it.
Yeah.
Because we're also going to have the playoff system and add a few other teams.
It's not the craziest idea in the world. Yeah, it's not the worst idea in the world because you've given everybody criteria. But if you have, okay, you're going to have 16 teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so the selection committee is going to take 6. So they're going to take, let's say it was this year, they're going to take Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma. And then you've got 10 other slots for the fans to select.
Yeah, but the committee picks the list. Like they have to be in the top 25 the previous week.
Yeah. Okay, well, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world, other than we're not jumping from 4 to 16 teams. We can talk a fantasy world, and that's always a fun discussion. And I don't have an issue with 16 teams. If I went to 16, I'd include all the conferences, though, all 10 at conference champions. But we're living in a fantasy world to try to drive this thing from 4 to 16, especially under your format in which the fans are selecting 10 teams. But it wouldn't be the worst thing as long as there's criteria involved. And so basically, if the committee's selecting 6, so you have 19 other teams that are in the top 25, 19 other ranked teams, and the fans would be selecting 10 of those 19. Out of those 19.
I don't think fans should get to pick 10. I think they should get to pick, like, I was thinking like 4, maybe 2. They shouldn't get to pick 10 teams.
Oh, okay.
I think that's too much, though.
Okay. All right. You have any other thoughts today?
No.
Okay. Well, thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Bye.
So a fan vote. So it wasn't just a blind fan vote. It was within a certain criteria. So we've got the Open here on ESPN displaying all the teams and the championship award, whatever they call that thing. The College Football Playoff Award. This, of course, is Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, taking your calls as we watch the selection show together. Big watch party. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV. This is the watch party. Who's on the line?
Yo, Mark, what's going on, Mark? This is Jan 716, man. Before I start, man, how's the quality looking a little bit, man? I tried to change it up a little bit.
How's what looking?
How's the audio?
Yeah, the audio seems to be fine. Thank you.
All right, I'll say goodbye. say, because last time on the on the Michigan part, I know a lot of fans commented saying I thought it was pretty poor.
I think it's fine. Appreciate that. What's on your mind?
Just want to make a couple of points real quick. I think when people try to make the argument for UCF to go into the college football playoff, the strength of schedule is poor. They're not getting in the college football playoff. Next year is actually their best shot to do it because they play Stanford. And if Stanford can have a really, really good year, that's UCF's best opportunity. If you look at what Boise State did back in the past, I know this is the BCS formula, but Boise State was the closest the closest non-group of five team to almost make it to a national championship. It was only a loss in 2011 that set them back to not making it to the national championship game. Around 2005, when Boise State and TCU were in their prime, they were winning all these games, but they didn't get the respect and recognition they deserve after all these undefeated seasons. So Boise State set up a formula and said, listen, we have to schedule stronger, elite-type programs, and we have to hope that those programs, if we do beat them, can start winning, can hopefully win and boost our resume. In 2009, they played Oregon, the same Oregon team that year that made it to the Rose Bowl and played Ohio State. They ended up beating Oregon, and no one gave Boise State an opportunity. 2010, a year later, they beat Virginia Tech, and if you remember watching that game, Mark, we all knew Virginia Tech was favored. They were actually favored to play Alabama in the national championship in 2010 in FedEx Field. Over 100,000 people, nothing but Virginia Tech fans. And Boise State beat them. And it propelled Boise State literally into the top, I want to say maybe top 5 or inside the top 3. If they would have never lost to Colin Kaepernick, they probably still would have never made it, but they would have finished at number 3. 2011 was the greatest opportunity because they played Georgia in the Georgia Dome. The same Georgia team that made it to the SEC championship game finished with over 11 wins. Again, no one gave Boise State an opportunity, and not even an opportunity to do it, but they were close. The closest they were at was number 3. And think about this, Mark. If Boise State would have never lost to TCU, Boise State would have been playing LSU for the national championship because they had the resume. They beat the team that made it to the SEC championship game. That was their win in Georgia with literally 90% of Georgia fans. Boise State was the closest team. And matter of fact, Boise State, they've been following that formula ever since 2009. Look at their non-conference schedules for literally the next 5 to 6 years. They're playing Oregon twice. They're playing Stanford. Twice. I gotta look at the schedule a little bit, but again, they're playing these elite programs for like the next 5 to 6 to 7 years because they get it. They understand that the playoff committee looks for the strength of schedule. We're not going to have the opponents because we're in the Mountain West Conference, folks. So it boils down to our non-conference opponents. That's simply it. I mean, look at Houston when they beat Oklahoma in 2016. Houston ended up in the top 10 right off the get after that game. And the more and more they kept winning, and the more and more teams fell, Houston climbed up the ranks. Now eventually they started losing games, and that gave the playoff committee, okay, yeah, this is exactly who we thought that maybe a non-group of 5 team can do. But the year before, Houston won their New Year's Six Bowls, then they came back and they beat Oklahoma on a neutral site field. Yeah, we're going to boost the resume up because we actually believe that Houston can compete with some other teams because look what they did to Oklahoma. And it wasn't even close. They dominated them. So for UCF to get into the college football playoff, it's either join a Power 5 conference or you have to schedule these elite Power 5 schools. You just can't be scheduling North Carolina and Pittsburgh and think that's going to get you in. No, that's not going to get you in. No, you have to try to schedule a Virginia Tech. Not a Virginia Tech, but you have to try to schedule Bama, Georgia. And I know these users saying, well, we're trying to schedule Bama, but they don't want to play us. Well, then, hey, there's a whole bunch of teams. Florida's available. Georgia's available. Clemson is available. You got all Penn State's available. Ohio State's available. Try to schedule these teams. And we all know Ohio State, they're not afraid to play anybody on the road, away, or on a neutral site field. Ohio State will be glad to play them. It'll boost their resume actually a little bit. And, who knows? Maybe Urban Meyer wants to say, we're kind of tired of UCF saying that we deserve a playoff spot. Let's go ahead and play him. I guarantee you he's down for that game. So UCF has to schedule these opponents They have to, because otherwise they're not. No matter how many undefeated seasons they have, unless they get that or join a Power 5 conference, they're not getting in.
All right. Thanks for the call. They did beat a team in Pitt by 31 points. They basically played the same game Clemson did.
They did. You know, that's definitely for sure. But like at the end of the day, your only shot is if you beat an elite football team. Boise State was the closest team to do it because it wasn't like it was just a 1 year. They consistently do it. So what happens every year for Boise State? They're favored to represent the non-Power 5 group conference because that creates reputation. You know, that creates this sense that, okay, Boise State, we've seen them do it in the past, and we believe that they can do it now. They're always favored because they've been doing it against elite Power 5 schools for years. UCF has to gain that. They have to earn the committee's trust to saying, listen, we understand that you have all these undefeated seasons, great comeback story. We understand that, but you have yet to play an elite Power 5 school in a regular season. You have not done that yet.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what you do in the bowl, but you got to do that in the regular season. And
we got.
Stanford
Hey man, we got your point. You're just repeating the same point over and over. But no, it's a good point. I totally get it. And that's the only way to gain respect. Well, we're going to take in the selection process and appreciate the call.
Oh, yep, as always.
Have a good one.
All right, you too, man.
So I saw a couple of people in the chat mention about watching the selection committee. So I'm watching the selection show. It's right behind me here. I'm not going to show a TV show on. So I assume, let me know, anybody, if you can't see the selections. I would think that everybody that's on the live chat should be able to see the selections. Maybe not. Otherwise, I'm going to have to rearrange my furniture to show you a TV screen for the selections. Yeah, anybody who mentions to me about blocking people's numbers, I can't block anybody's numbers. I don't see anybody's numbers. That's why you can call here and not be concerned about me knowing your number, and I'm not concerned about you knowing my number. You don't know my number. That's a fake ghost phone number. So I don't know your phone number. You don't know mine, so you can call with no hesitation. All right, we're getting down to it. Hopefully that they will unveil very soon. I think it's pretty much an Oklahoma-Ohio State decision, and we know that the Sooners are going to be selected for number 4. That's what I think's going to happen. Let me get my glasses on, and you guys can make fun of me and laugh because they are just a mess. I've had them forever, and they're just beat to crap. And let's see what we got here. We've got the Vegas book. A lot of people are interested in this. That Georgia would be a 3.5-point favorite over Oklahoma. They would be a 6.5-point favorite against Ohio State, and Oklahoma would be a 2.5-point favorite over Ohio State. For what it's worth, let's understand that as I've told you guys week after week after week after week after week, that I'm tracking all the top 25 games, and 25% of them are upsets against the Vegas book. Let's also understand that the favorite has rarely won the college football playoff. They certainly did not in 2014. 2015, Alabama, yeah, they were a favorite against Clemson. 2016, I think Alabama was a favorite. Clemson pulled off the very minor upset. And last year, what was Alabama? Probably a 4 or 5-point favorite against Georgia in the championship game. So Kirby Smart went to the podium, and he was also on ESPN last night, and he really stated his case, huh? Kirby Smart making his case as Urban Meyer did way back in 2006. Now, since then, Urban Meyer has basically shut his mouth and just said, is what it is, and they make their selections, and we've stated our case, and that's what it is. We got a call coming in to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, our big Selection Show watch party. Who's on the line?
Hey, Michael. Excuse me. Hey, Mark. It's Michael Hoke. How you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad. Hey, I won't keep you long because I know everybody's like this. And I'm accounting on the road traveling, so I don't know if they've revealed the court. But I do got to ask you this. If it is Georgia, which I wouldn't be surprised because the game they play yesterday, they get in over Oklahoma and Ohio State. Do you think the Big 12 and the Big 10 might consider pulling out of the contract? And I'll hang up and listen to your reply. Thanks, Mark.
Oh, hang on. Hang on. Can you slow down just a little bit? It's a bad connection. Plus, if you can slow that down just a little bit, I have no idea what you just said.
Okay, sorry for the connection, but what I'm asking is if it is Georgia, which I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but if Oklahoma or Ohio State doesn't get the fourth pick, do you see maybe the Big 10 and the Big 12 maybe trying to get out of the contract just to be
okay?
Get out of the contract.
All right, I'll address that. Thank you. Appreciate the call. Okay. Will the Big 10 or the Big 12 get mad, or both of them get mad and say, hey, this is an awful system and we got ripped off and why are we not in this? And basically the SEC gets 2 spots now. Will they pull out of the contract? Well, I don't know exactly how it's stipulated in the contract, but I would think that these leagues have all signed the contract and are fully in and trusting of the committee process and understanding of it, that they have laid their fate in the hands of this selection committee and they have signed a contract, because the contract is tied directly to big money TV presentations of the college football playoffs. Therefore, you're not going to have these renegade schools running out or the leagues running out of the contract and saying, we're not in because you've left us out a bunch of times. They're all locked in for however long this goes before they've got to decide where they go from here, which I forget what the year is. They originally signed either a 12-year contract, so that would have been 2014. So that takes us to 2026. So we've got about 8 more years of this format, unless they all get together and say, we're going to revise the current contract and we can all agree that it needs to be expanded to 8. Reese Davis made the point last night, and I don't know that it's I certainly respect his opinion. He said that he believes if Georgia gets elected, then wow, that's the best way to get this thing expanded, is to see Georgia get selected and 2 from the SEC to get in again this year. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Deon. I ain't going to keep you long. Hey, man, I keep hearing people say that Notre Dame might get left out. What you think about that?
If you would have asked me that this time yesterday, I would have told you that's insane. They went undefeated. What else can they do? They play a very difficult schedule. So the schedule was scheduled difficult. It didn't play out as difficult as it was scheduled. That's not their fault. I would have said that's ridiculous. But, you know, DeAndre, as Championship Saturday played out, and I watched and watched and watched and considered what these teams had to do in playing one of the best teams in their conference again, I was thinking, you know what? Why don't we teach Notre Dame a lesson? Teach them a lesson and say, you're not in a conference. You're not playing this weekend. You're not having to play and put your necks on the line a 13th time against a quality team, whether that's Texas, Northwestern, whoever it is, Georgia. You don't have to do that. So we're going to force you to do that.
Yeah, that's one big issue, man.
That would be hysterical.
Also, and there's no slight at you. I heard one of the people in the chat say that Clemson only beat Ohio State once. Now, make sure they know that Clemson's beaten Ohio State more than one time in modern time period. So they said only once. I said Clemson's going to beat Ohio State at least 3 times.
Okay, so depending on what we think are modern times, they beat Ohio State 31-0 in the 2016 playoff. They beat Ohio State in the 2013 Orange Bowl 40-35, and they beat Ohio State in the 1978 Gator Bowl 18-15. Right. 18-15?
Right.
Something like that. 20-15. It's 20-16. I try to remember all these scores, but I can't. But yeah, so Clemson has a perfect history against Ohio State.
Yeah. But I honestly think Notre Dame should get left out too. Either join the ACC or go join the conference. Now I don't agree that Georgia should get in over Ohio State and Oklahoma. Now I think Georgia's better than both. Well, I don't know if Georgia's better than both of them because I haven't seen them play. But I don't think they should get in over Oklahoma and Ohio State. And Ohio State, they have a clunker every now and then and every year, and they lost by 29 points to Purdue. I mean, yeah, that happened, but they do it every year. I mean, I'm not saying you know what I think about Michigan football. Well, I'm not saying they should get on that, but they're still 12 and 0, 12 and 1 now.
Yes.
So that's saying something about how good your program is. And yet play one more game than Notre Dame and a Northwestern team that gave Notre Dame a run for their money. What was the final score, like 24-17 or 24-20?
The Notre Dame Northwestern game?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but all right, Mark, I'll listen to the show, man. You have a great day.
Thanks, DeAndre. I appreciate it. It's our man, DeAndre, who is safe because Clemson's in. They're good. They played a pretty lackluster championship game. Not for them, but a lackluster championship game was displayed by the ACC for a second consecutive year, with Clemson just proving to be head and shoulders above everyone else in the ACC. Now, think about this. If Notre Dame fully joined the ACC, all the Notre Dame athletic programs have joined the ACC. Lacrosse, Notre Dame lacrosse, baseball, field hockey, they've all joined the ACC, but not football. If the Notre Dame football team would have joined the ACC, they could have been placed in the Coastal Division to help balance out the two divisions, Clemson, Florida State on the other side. And our championship game last night, think about this. Think about how much clarity this would have brought to the situation. Our ACC championship game last night could have been Clemson and Notre Dame. All right, we're watching the selection show together. It's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? It's Big Poppy. I'm back again.
Yes, you are. What's up?
So I was trying to watch the college football playoff show. I don't know if they released the rankings or not, but my little brother doesn't want to give up the remote, so I'm just letting him have it. So I'm just waiting for the notification to come. But yeah, a lot of people keep on saying Notre Dame, no conference championship, no championship appearance, and I think people are only using Notre Dame not playing in the conference championship to justify why their team should get in over Dame and not taking into the fact what Notre Dame has accomplished this season. And I think that's unfair. When you look at what Notre Dame did, if you want to go by teams that are currently ranked right now, they're 3-0. But if you want to go against what the team's rank was when they played them, they would be 5-0. But I'm just going to go by after the season ranking. So Notre Dame beat Michigan, they beat Northwestern, and they beat Syracuse. And even though I feel Syracuse was highly overrated, they were still number 12 in the nation. So that means they were 3-0 against the top 25, and they're 2-0 against the top 15, which means 3-0 total in the top 25. So Notre Dame most definitely deserves a spot. I don't want to hear people keep using the argument of Notre Dame not being in the conference just to justify the fact why their team should get in. And really, Notre Dame is in the conference. They're just not officially part of the conference. They have a contract with the ACC that allows them to play 5 or 6 ACC opponents a year. So really, they're in the conference, but they're not officially a part of the conference. So really, they're still in the conference. They just didn't play a conference championship game. And I don't think it's fair to use that of them not playing in the conference championship game just to justify why every other team should get in over them, because people use the conference championship game as you have to win it to get in. But Alabama, if they would have lost the SEC championship game yesterday, they still would have got in. So how big of an impact is a conference championship game part of a team making them? Because if Georgia would have won it yesterday, this spot would have been solidified. But if Alabama would have lost, then you would have had an argument with Alabama, Oklahoma, and Ohio State all competing to see who gets in. So really, how big is it? Do you need to win it to get in, or if you lose it, do you still qualify to get in?
Are you asking me what should happen or what does happen? We've already been proven here over the last 2 years that you don't need to win your conference. Ohio State made it 2 years ago. Alabama made it last year. You don't have to win the conference championship. And we're going to see more of this. They're really going to go rogue in the future. Should a team have to win its conference championship? Absolutely. They should. Under this system, they should. If not, we need to expand to 8 teams at least.
I don't think it should be. I think if you're okay, so I'm gonna ask you a question. So Alabama loses to Georgia yesterday in the SEC championship. They lost. They didn't win the conference championship, but Oklahoma and Ohio State did. But Alabama has destroyed everybody they played in the SEC this year. It hasn't been close.
Fine.
I believe they're the only SEC team to win by every conference game. Well, they're the only SEC team to win a certain amount of games against the top 25 by 2 touchdowns or more. So if they lose, how would that work?
How would it work? They would have made the playoff. How should it work? They should be left out of the playoff.
So
we should, if we want to go with your theory, then we need to obliterate the conferences. Everybody just be an independent, and we'll give everyone a schedule. That's what we need to do. Forget the conferences. Get rid of them. If everybody is agreeing that the conference championships are meaningless, then get rid of the conferences. Just everybody plays for themselves. They play an independent schedule, and we'll just hand them their schedule. And everybody is just forget the regionalization of college football and the conferences. Get rid of them. They don't mean anything. So why are we playing conference championships? Why didn't we just say, we could have said at the end of the ACC season, we could have said, we don't really need to see Clemson play Pitt. Why don't we choose somebody else for them to play? So it's going to give us a better gauge on where they are. Why don't we grab somebody else for them to play? Ohio State, well, we know that they're going to kill Northwestern. Let's grab somebody else for them to play. and so that we have a better judgment to make here. All right. So I'm going to ask everybody on the live chat if they actually want to see the selection. I'm going to guess that they're going to go to break once before they make these selections. Maybe not, but I'm going to guess that they are. And I will, look, the big board's coming up. I can change this around so that the TV's behind me. We can do that. So, yeah, it looks like they're going to break, man. It's almost like I work at this place. All right. So, I'm going to let you go. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it, man. Call back anytime.
Yes, sir. Can I call you after the selection?
You can call anytime.
Okay. Appreciate it. I'll be back on a little bit.
Okay. I'm going to turn this around. This could be ugly. I got all sorts of wires and things going all over the place. Hang on. crap all over the place here. All right. Let's make some good TV, huh? Move that like that. I'll sit over here. Oh, magic in the making right here.
National Championship Trophy presented by Dr. Pepper. That is the prize for the winner of the college football playoff. This is the 5th year of the 14th playoff in the college football national champion, selected by a 13-member selection committee. This is the criteria used to rank the team. This is unless you believe the team to be unequivocally better than the team to be compared against. The championship schedule and the outcomes of common opponents and compensating margin victory that they should and other relevant factors give them some latitude to exercise some subjectivity, which is the department of yesterday with a formula, figured out, got the answer. We're going to be able to see for the next hour. I'm doing well.
All right, I think we got that executed. Let's see. See what we got. Oh, here we are. Alabama's #1. Shocker.
Imagine we're going to see the Clemson party. At number 2, pizza party. Excited. All right. How many of those pizzas is Dexter warranty? I think it's 4 or 5 itself. Dude, 40. You got 4. You got 2 more games. Tigers make their 4th straight college football playoff appearance. They won the national championship 2016, and there's Clemson at the pizza party. That is a much more subdued reaction than we got. It's not as exciting. Not only who's going to be 3 and 4, but who this ends up being will dictate where Alabama and where Clemson end up playing in their game. And by the way, that has not been determined yet. We don't have the answer to that yet. Part of it, the reason for that will probably be told when we see who number 4 is. At the moment, let's see if Notre Dame held 3 without playing yesterday, and they did. So in the first 4 years of the college football playoff, we had a grand total of 3 undefeated teams, including
Oklahoma,
none of those teams,
Georgia, Ohio State,
national championships.
I say Oklahoma.
Winds up 4 wins, it we'll have our first undefeated champion called Notre Dame and Clemson. Notre Dame and Clemson. Great. Last time they played, it was a great game. Went down to the wire in Death Valley. That was. Notre Dame pushed them hard. Will they be able to do so again? We don't know where that national semifinal will be. It will be on December 29th. So it turns out the committee was thinking much like us, at least in terms of 3 teams for 1 spot. Before we reveal those, let's look at the comparison, some of the numbers. As I told you, there's the eye test. There's some subjectivity involved here. FPI is more of a Vegas-based, forward-looking power ranking Who do you think would win the game? In that category, Georgia has the edge. They also have the edge in strength of schedule, but in strength of record, meaning how you fared against your schedule, it is Ohio State ahead of Georgia, followed by Oklahoma. Game control, this measures at play-by-play how likely you are to win a game throughout the course of each and every snap you have.
Basically how dominant you are.
How dominant you are, and Ohio State is way behind in that category for whatever that's worth.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and I think that speaks about some of the games that we talked about prior to Michigan and the Northwest.
Okay, we've got people hanging on the edge of their seats. Who should it be?
Yes,
Who should
not
it
one
be?
of them.
Who should it be?
Who should it be? Georgia? I think it'll be Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
I think it'll be Oklahoma. It should be Georgia. I imagine it's going to be Oklahoma.
So yes, you know, yeah.
Let's have a look at it.
Should be
Right now, the number 14 play Alabama in the national semifinal. In one of the games on December 29th, it will be Tyler Murray and the Big 12 champion Oklahoma Sooners. Now, look, you see, this is a very familiar look. 3 of these teams made the playoff last year. Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma. There have been 20 playoff berths in the playoff era.
And now it doesn't matter what the rest of it is.
Those 3 teams, and I'm just told, and this is what Alabama preferred. They didn't mind playing Oklahoma. Preferred not to play them in a virtual home game in Dallas, so that will be the Orange
Virtual
Bowl game.
home
You
game.
know what I'm talking about, Loa? He's supposed to be healthy. Tyler Murray, top 2 guys for the Heisman. Jalen Hurts had a little bit of a star turn, and Oklahoma gets that 4th spot.
Yeah, and I think they deserve that 4th spot. And we will get a chance to see Kyler Murray in this outstanding offense click into Alabama team. And Nick Saban shut down this offense that nobody else has been able to.
You can see Kyler Murray just said the.
Okay.
I gotta believe if 5 is going to be Ohio State. I think if Georgia's going to be in, they'd be at 4. But now I bet Ohio State.
That's
oh,
that is
Georgia.
Wow. You're not a betting man.
And
Wow.
that to me is that's crazy because you think about it, that means there was clear separation between Oklahoma and Ohio State. Clear. That means it was very clear.
That means it was a Georgia.
All right. It's a stupid system and continues to be. And not because of that selection. I'm not arguing with the selection. The selection's fine. Oklahoma didn't have the bad loss like Ohio State had. What I found hypocritical, if I'm understanding this correctly, is that Alabama is requesting that they don't play in Dallas against Oklahoma because it's a virtual road game. Correct me if I'm mistaken here. Washington 2 years ago traveled all the way from the Pacific Northwest all the way to Atlanta. All the way to Atlanta to play Alabama. And Alabama's complaining about playing Oklahoma in Dallas? Seriously? Am I getting that right? Okay. So Ohio State probably had better wins than Oklahoma. Oklahoma did not have the awful loss that Ohio State had. They had a lot of questionable. I would argue that Oklahoma had just as many close calls against marginal competition like Oklahoma State and Army than Ohio State did with Maryland. And it's pretty much just the Maryland game, right? That's the only team that took them to the wire. Actually, Oklahoma was taken to the wire more times than Ohio State. So everybody's got a gripe in this thing. So Ohio State couldn't make it in as an 11-2 conference champ, and they can't make it in as a 12-1 conference champ. So the Big Ten gets left out. So does the Pac-12, of course, but they had a 3-loss team, a 3-loss champion. UCF. What about UCF? Wherever they landed, they must have been, after winning, they were number 8. They probably leapfrogged Michigan to number 7, I would think. All right. I can't listen to the 2 things at the same time or listen to myself and listen to these guys, but so I'm going to turn this down. And maybe there is some Urban Meyer bias against. I don't know. I hope not. I hope they actually did this with clear minds and heads and tried to select the 4 best teams. And probably they did. I'm not gonna go on any conspiracy theory here. I'm going to just believe that the committee did what they thought was best. And so there's a number of you who I'm guessing are Ohio State fans. That state that maybe Ohio State received a little backlash. I don't know. Ohio State lost to Purdue by 29. So that was their undoing in this one again. Clemson and Notre Dame. Clemson hasn't played anyone that good for a long, long time. We'll see how they do in this game against Notre Dame and see if they can dominate the game. They just need to win it, of course, by 1 point. But and then, of course, we get this Alabama-Oklahoma matchup that people are anticipating in terms of the offense of Oklahoma, and can they score and score enough against Alabama? And what is that Alabama offense going to do against that awful Oklahoma defense? I would have loved to have seen Ohio State in this. I would have loved to have seen Georgia. I think that the 4 best teams, and again, this is my opinion, this is not what should have played out, are Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, and Ohio State. Those are the 4 most talented teams and playing the best right now. But these other teams have made it. Notre Dame gets ushered into the playoff despite only playing 12 games and not playing in a conference. So had they lost the 1 game, I'm sure that Notre Dame at 11-1 would not have made it in favor of, I guess it would have been Georgia. That would have been something, huh? All right, I'll take your calls. And don't know that there was a whole lot of suspense. I think most of us believe that Oklahoma would be selected, and they were. It's a stupid process. All right. This is our college football playoff selection committee watch party. Who's on the line?
Terry Ann.
Hey, Terry Ann. How are you? It's good to hear from you.
Well, I'm recovering from yesterday, Mark. I tell you, that game really got to me. I had to stop watching because I started having chest pains. But I'm telling you, that Georgia Tech was one tough team yesterday. You got to give them credit.
Absolutely, they are. They're an excellent team. I think they're one of the 4 best teams.
I think so too. But I'm going to tell you, I'm really glad that they didn't get in, because I don't know if my ball heart can handle another game like that.
Oh, I bet. That was a thriller. Isn't it just crazy how Tua replaced Jalen last year and the exact opposite happened this year, and they came back from 2 scores down, did the same exact thing. It's crazy.
I know it. I mean, if it was a movie, the audience wouldn't believe it. But I mean, you couldn't write a movie more perfect than that. And I just tell you that I give Jalen a lot of credit. He is one awesome young man to stay like he did and take a back seat like he did, and just really hoping for his chance to come back. And I'm really glad he got that chance, and he showed people that he was able to stay there and actually improve his game, because when he came in, he had to come in passing, which is what everybody really, got on him about. Like he wasn't a great passer, but he stayed there under that great quarterback coach, and he learned. And that should be a lesson to a lot of these young men, that when they don't get that way, they just transfer out. Look what Jalen was able to do.
Yeah, it was fascinating. He really threw the ball very confidently and was on point and certainly prepared. He must have been prepared mentally and physically to enter that situation, because the game was on the line and he really needed to make some plays, and he did just that.
He sure did. And I'm just so proud of him. I'm proud of my Bama team. And I'm really glad that we got a few weeks to heal up. And And I think it's going to be a good playoff. We got 4 great teams in. But I'm going to tell you, with the situation like that, I really think we're going to be expanding to 8 teams a lot quicker than people think we are.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think so too. I do think, maybe I shouldn't say this until I've got a month or more to predict the game. Well, I got less than a month, the 29th. So about 4 weeks to predict the game. So maybe I won't. I'm going to hold my tongue on my Alabama, Oklahoma. I was going to state when you said that there are going to be 3 great games. I was going to jump on that comment because I'm expecting a little bit different out of that one in particular. But we've got plenty of time to sit on that and project it. But I would believe, yeah, 8 teams as teams continue. The controversy continues every year. Now we had Georgia, Ohio State, and Central Florida all with a claim and all got left out. So this happens every year. There's always a few teams that have just as much of a claim as the number 4, number 3 teams, but are left out. So that's going to cause some conferences not to be too happy.
It really isn't. And also about Georgia now, I think Georgia is one of the best teams. But another thing, you can look at the other side of it and say the 2 best teams they played, they lost to. So, I mean, you know, I don't know what to do other than expand it, you know, to make it. If you expand it, it makes it more fair because you've got a great Georgia team left out. You've got a great Ohio State team left out. I'm not really going to get into the UCF because I really, you know, I don't have a whole lot of anything for them until they actually play somebody, you know. I'm sorry, but that's the way I feel.
Well, I don't think they're anywhere close to being one of the 4 best teams. I think they're about the 15th or 20th best team in the country. That's my estimation.
Yeah. That's about what I've got them to, Mark. But I just thought I'd call in and thank you for having this viewing party. And
yeah.
I appreciate you, Mark.
Terry Ann, thank you so much for the support. I appreciate that. You have a great day. Well, I know Nick Saban cares deeply about this Southeastern Conference Championship, and when they were winning and going to the BCS even before this playoff and then into the playoff system, he is certainly among and amidst all the playoff talk has stated many times prior to the SEC Championship is that this is the Southeastern Conference Championship, and this means something to me. But Alabama fans, you had nothing to be worried about. If all you cared about, and maybe some of you do, is the playoff, this ranking shows us where Georgia is now placed. Think Georgia went from just 4 to 5. So if Alabama would have lost, they barely would have been budged anywhere. Let's say they would have come up empty. Let's say Fromm would have completed a Hail Mary and then they won in overtime. Alabama would have barely been nudged out of the number 1 spot despite a loss. All right, it's our college football playoff watch party. Who's on the line?
What's up, Marcus? Big Poppy.
Hey, Big Poppy.
I just saw the rankings and I agree. I was a little bit confused about the criteria. They said conference championship, and I got a question about what you said earlier. So UCF won their conference championship, and they probably wouldn't got in because their strength of schedule suggested. But other than that, I agree with the rankings. I know a lot of OSU fans in the comment section are salty. But really, to be honest, it's hard to play good defense in the Big 12. I would like to see if Ohio State would have played the Big 12 with the way their defense was playing before they played against Michigan, they probably wouldn't have as good of a defense. Their defense would probably be a little bit more worse than what it already was. So Oklahoma's defense against Alabama's offense and Alabama's defense versus Oklahoma's offense. I'm looking forward, but my early prediction, I'm taking Oklahoma to win just because Nick Saban hates every team that has beaten Alabama has one for dual threat quarterback, and Kyler Murray is the best dual threat quarterback that Alabama has ever faced. Kyler Murray, he's John Manziel-like, but faster. But he has the throwing ability. He has the accuracy of, I don't know who's the most accurate passer Oklahoma has ever faced. But he's going to be a nightmare for Alabama to stop. And Nick Saban doesn't like these no-huddle offenses. He's already spoke out against them a few times. And Alabama's going to get tested. That defense is going to be tested. But I think this Alabama's team, this Alabama's defense, the way it's constructed, is built to handle quarterbacks like this with the speed of the linebacking core, especially Dylan Moses. He runs like a 4.4, sub 4.5. So I think this team will be equipped for it, but I just don't think they will be able to stop it. Because Kyler Murray is the best dual threat they have ever faced. And I'm predicting Oklahoma to win this game. I don't know if I should say Oklahoma wins 72-63. Or would that just be an understatement? I wouldn't be surprised if it was even more points scored. It's going to be a shootout. And then Notre Dame and Clemson, I like Clemson to beat Notre Dame 48-10, similar to how Clemson destroyed Ohio State a few years. Notre Dame isn't good, but as far as they deserve to be in. They deserve to be in, but they're not one of the best 4 teams, but they just deserve to be in. So I think Notre Dame is going to get crushed. But simply for the fact that I just don't think they're that good. And that's my prediction. But I'm happy with the rankings. I can't wait to see who UCF plays. I hope they play Georgia. Or if not, they'll probably be in the Fiesta Bowl. But like somebody said earlier, who wants to see Boise State versus UCF, even though it'll be the battle? I guess you can consider it the Power 5, the Group of 5 championship or whatnot. But who wants to see that? And then if UCF wins, then we have to deal with UCF calling themselves the undisputed national championships for the 2nd year in a row. So I hope they win their bowl game. I hope they go 12-0. So then somebody can finally call up and be like, "Hey, we're tired of you calling yourself national champions. Play us first game of the season." But here's the rankings, and I'm happy.
Very good. Thanks for the call. Got another one coming in. We missed it, unfortunately. Okay, we'll talk to you next time. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I got to say that this whole situation, and even if Ohio State was selected, just leaves a bitter taste in my mouth, just because it's unfortunate that 13 people are selecting teams. That this is just, when you really think about it and let it sink in, it is crazy to think 13 people hold this kind of power to basically say that Oklahoma, for example, is better than Georgia and Ohio State. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. It's really hitting me a little bit more. All right, it's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Albert. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing well. What's going on today?
Just watching the selection show.
So what do you think?
I think my problem is I hear, and I'm from Georgia. I'm an Ohio State fan. I hear a lot of people saying, if you want to choose the 4 best teams, put in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you know how good the SEC is if you don't play them against the other elite conferences?
Well, the SEC, okay, so my first point is going to come against your point. It's going to counter your point. Then I'm going to make a point to support your point. So my first point would be that there's no question that the SEC played best against the other 4 leagues compared to the other 4 leagues. If we take all the results of all the non-conference games, the SEC by far played better than the other 4 conferences. Okay, so that's my first point, that the SEC did play well. There were very few disappointing or underachieving games that the SEC played. LSU went out there and beat Miami. Auburn went out there and beat Washington. Alabama beat Louisville. On down the line, they took care of business. And the games that they lost were very understandable. Texas A&M lost on a 2-point conversion to Clemson at home, so that's a very quote-unquote good loss. Vanderbilt only lost by 5 at Notre Dame. So the SEC took care of business. But to your second point, they did not play top competition. Miami turned out to be no good. Louisville was a disaster. So what? Alabama playing Louisville, you talk about a joke. Louisville couldn't beat, they couldn't stay within 5 touchdowns of Georgia Tech or a bunch of lousy teams in their own league. So that was bad. So to your second point, yes, the SEC didn't play anyone outside the league. The best team that they played would have been Washington. And they won a very, very close game, Auburn over Washington. That was a slugfest. I watched every play. It could have gone either way, very close game. That, unless I'm missing something, that is the best win for the SEC. You're right. There was no game against Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma, on down the line. There were none of those games. Washington would be the one. Yep. Well, there was a game against Clemson, but they lost. But they didn't beat anyone outside the conference. Correct.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like we've come to this point where becoming a runner-up in a conference is a more impressive feat than winning one of the best conferences year in and year out in college football.
Well, it depends what conference you play in. If you play in one conference, yes. If you play in the other 4, no.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. It seems like I mean, I hear people saying, Georgia, how can you penalize them for losing to the number 1 team? I get that, but how do you reward them for that loss? That doesn't make much sense to me.
Yeah, and I think what you're also saying is, yeah, we can open our eyes and see that Alabama is a really, really dominant team, but who did they beat outside the SEC? And if you want to point to their LSU win, their Mississippi State win, okay, who did those teams beat? And so, yeah, these conferences play in silos, and there aren't enough quality non-conference games to properly evaluate them.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I guess one more question I have is just the weird narrative I feel that is going on with Dwayne Haskins. How is he not the front runner for the Heisman? I felt this all year, and perhaps I was just wanting to get what you think on this. Do you think that the issues with Ohio State in the preseason affected the narrative of Dwayne Haskins and his performance this year?
I sure hope not, but I believe so. And I think it affected this vote. I think it affected that committee. Not that Ohio State would have made it in another year, but that whole situation affected people in that room. I don't think there's any question about that. To some extent, I'm not saying that Ohio State would have made it if that wouldn't have happened, but it affected people. And by extension, it affected Dwayne Haskins. And them struggling in games, even when it was 52-51, unfortunately affects Dwayne Haskins. And it shouldn't. Actually, it should be to his credit that he's overcoming poor defensive play in certain weeks.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and just, watching him and looking at the stats, it's like, man, this guy looks like the best player in college football. Maybe he's not running the ball, but, I mean, who's passing like him? No one.
That I can agree with, against better defenses than in the Big 12. But Kyler Murray, he would be my Heisman winner, and I'm not a big Heisman guy, so I should reserve my quote-unquote vote because I would research it and really think about it if I had an actual vote. But off the top of my head, I would vote for Murray just because I think he's more important to his team than anyone else.
All right, well, I don't want to take any more of your time. Thank you for fielding the questions. Awesome. Just thank you for the awesome content.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. You have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for your support, everyone. I appreciate those comments. If you truly mean them, I appreciate them. Keeps me going amidst a lot of things going on. So, yeah, we have the guys, they're going to talk it up all day. And at some point, I don't know when that's coming on, 5, 6 o'clock Eastern time, we'll have our bowl selections. So let me see here. After all the games and all the instant analysis and the late night live stream we had that went close to 2 o'clock in the morning, I made a list of some content I would like to produce and post that I don't know that I'm going to get to all this, but Notre Dame, join a conference. I may cut a video on that and all the problems that this causes by Notre Dame not being in a conference. Number 2, the Heisman voters, that we have 10% of the votes cast before the championship games. Those Heisman voters should automatically have their votes stripped and taken away and not counted, and they themselves should be taken off the list of voters. They should be taken off by the committee. That's irresponsible, and it's just stupid. Then I was going to make the case for, you can make 4 separate cases. Oklahoma, which doesn't have to be made because they made it. You can make the Ohio State case. You can make the Central Florida case. You can make the Georgia case. 18 playoff. Who would make an 18 playoff? Well, you would think the 5 conference champions. So that's Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, and Washington. Central Florida as the group of 5 best team champion. And then 2 other teams. And I think they're clearly this year. Georgia? Who would make it? Who would make the last spot? Am I missing someone? Who would make the 8th spot this year? That's a great question. I didn't think of that. Oh, Notre Dame. No, they already made it. Yeah, Notre Dame. I'll get it together here. The 5 conference champions. Notre Dame, 6. Central Florida, 7. Georgia, 8. Those would be the 8 this year. How about 16 teams? All right, how about the most controversial team during this college football playoff era? It's not even close. Ohio State in 2014, they made it. In 2015, they didn't make it. In 2016, they made it. 2017 and 18, they didn't make it. In all those years, they had a claim, and 2 of the times they got selected, right? 2014, 2016, and 3 of those times they did not get selected. So by far, Ohio State, and I think we've got a visitor coming here. This should be fun. That, oh yeah, look at this. Delilah, we'll get you on screen. No, maybe not quite. Hey there. Hey, sweetie. How are you? Yeah. We got my son's dog coming in here. All right. So the Buckeyes have been the most controversial of the teams because every year they're on the brink. And this has happened now 5 consecutive years. Maybe I'll do a video on that. Playoff previews. Of course, we can do early playoff previews. Bowl previews. I'm going to go nuts on that. And then I'll do maybe my top 10 bowls. There we go. All right. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to enjoy the day. And, of course, I'm going to analyze all this stuff as much as you can possibly imagine. I will analyze it with my top 25, of course, that actually makes sense right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. For everybody that joined, I appreciate it so much. If you had a question or comment that you put in the live chat that you want directed toward me to be answered or you want to be heard, I'm not going to catch it in the live chat. There are so many comments that are flying by constantly that please just select a video, any video, and leave your comment in the comments section. And then I look at the comments every day, at least once a day, and I will answer and respond to your comment. So thanks so much for joining us. We will see you soon with my top 25 and all the analysis concerning the playoffs and the bowls coming up here on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We thank you for joining the best debate, discussion, and analysis in college football right here. We'll see you next time.
They give Georgia the edge with 2 losses.
Yeah. Here you go.
People are idiots.